Mr. Chairman, thank you. Your line of questions raises a significant problem for us in that we're given information about what the Coast Guard wants, and it's significantly different from what we anticipate the Coast Guard needs. And you were referring to the couple $2 billion annually. I'd like to go into the process a little more deeply here. The budgeting process generally begins with OMB sending the various departments its expectations, that is OMB's expectations for the coming year. You then have a pass back, and OMB then checks that out, and then that eventually becomes the President's budget. Is that essentially what happens here?
Yes, sir.
I thought so. So the question is, in answer to the question, is it an answer to the Chairman's question that the problem begins with OMB sending the Coast Guard a minimum amount of a minimum budget that doesn't reflect what we perceive the needs of the Coast Guard to be? Is that, and I'm not sure you want to answer that. Let me just make that a statement. My recollection when I was at the Department of Interior, that's how it works. And so there's a constant tension back and forth. What we need, therefore, is at the end of our process to have a clarity over the 5-year period as to what is expected, what we expect the Coast Guard to do that is consistent with our authorization. Can the Coast Guard provide that information to us without OMB sidetracking the data?
We engage in the budget process as you have outlined it, sir. We are working with a sense of urgency and diligence to deliver that 5-year outlook to the committee. We understand how critical it is for the oversight and investment decisions that need to be made, and we are fully engaged with the budgetary process, sir.
Perhaps a way that we could address this issue is that at the conclusion of our annual or semi-annual authorization for the Coast Guard, we have authorized a plan. Certain number of ships for this class or that class, certain number of personnel and so forth for the out years. And perhaps maybe the answer here is for us to require the Coast Guard to report its progress in the authorization that we have provided in the most recent reauthorization of the Coast Guard functions. Could the Coast Guard do that without OMB screwing up the numbers? I should not add that last clause to it.
So,
let me just say, could the Coast Guard report back on its progress in meeting the authorized activities?
So, sir, we would absolutely be responsive to the desire to understand how the authorizations have been executed.
Yeah. I think that may be a way of having the Coast Guard be responsive to the authorization rather than responsive to the annual instructions from OMB. So I'll just let that hang out there and consider that myself and perhaps with the chairman and staff that might be a way we can be up to date and require that the Coast Guard at least be responsive to what we have authorized to be done, recognizing that we're not the only player in the game. Certainly the President and the administration are as they allocate in their minds the resources of the nation. Just generally, Mr. Anderson, it appears as though your report indicates that the Coast Guard is making steps to, and progress, in answering the performance questions that GAO has raised over the years. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, and I'd like to applaud the Coast Guard for concurring with virtually all of our recommendations on improving data quality in the context of performance goals. I would also like to note that the Coast Guard routinely develops corrective actions and articulates those corrective actions when a goal is unmet. They put these corrective actions into the APR, and we applaud them for that. I think our points on the corrective action score in terms of those unmet goals is some of the corrective actions aren't measurable or time-bound. And those are criteria that we would like to see for full closure of those recommendations.
Okay. Before the chairman disciplines me, I will yield back.